Welcome to the Birding for Joy podcast, a show about discovering and exploring all the ways birding and wild birds bring joy into our lives. I'm Candi Lynn Fite, your gracious host and joyful birder. If you're curious about learning more about birding for joy, grab your favorite beverage, settle on your perch, and let's get into today's episode. Greetings, listeners, and welcome to the Birding for Joy podcast. If you've listened to the show before, welcome back. If this is your first time tuning in, I am so happy you're here. I hope this episode finds you all happy, healthy, and finding precious time to venture outdoors and spend time with the birds. Today's topic covers one of my favorite things about birding: owls. I've talked about owls several times on the podcast, but after 3 seasons and 52 episodes, I've never dedicated an entire episode about how to look for owls while out birding. Some birders refer to the practice as owling. So when I refer to owling on the podcast, don't think I'm talking about Merriam-Webster's definition, which is the act of smuggling sheep out of England, or the trendy phrase that some use when posing in a crouched position for social media photos. Here at Birding for Joy, owling means, well, looking for owls. I've had many owl encounters, and I'm often asked, what is my secret to finding owls? The truth is, there is no secret. Sometimes luck comes into play. Sometimes I stumble into the right place at the right time. But there's no magic trick. But in this episode, I'm going to offer you several tips I have found helpful when looking for owls, as well as how to be responsible and ethical birders once you find one. One thing I'll add before we dive in is I've acquired my knowledge from online resources, field guides, and experience in the field, or in some cases, in the woods. I am by no means an owl expert, so take what you find useful, maybe even do a bit of research on your own, and explore the fascinating world of owls. The first and probably most important thing is learning about what species of owls are found in your local area. The easiest way is to search online for owls in your specific region, and then from there, research what types of habitats those particular species are found in, such as woodlands, grasslands, dense forests, deserts, or wetland areas. You can check with your local parks and wildlife department, consult a field guide for your area, or simply type owl plus your local region into a Google search bar. You can also look on eBird for owls spotted in your area. However, even though I'm a huge fan of eBird for many purposes, owl sighting and reporting is somewhat of a controversial topic, as I'll discuss in the ethical portion of this episode later. There are about 250 species of owls worldwide, but only between 19 and 30 species are found in North America, depending on your source. After you discover which species can be found near you and what habitats they're normally found in, learn what each species looks like and what kinds of calls they make. Most birders are familiar with owls hooting, but they can also screech, whistle, hiss, clack, and whinny. During mating season, you might even be able to hear a duet between a pair that will call to one another from their locations. Also, learn about the particular behaviors of different species. What time of the day do they hunt? And when are they most active? Most species are classified as nocturnal, meaning they hunt at night and then rest during the day, while a couple are diurnal, which means they're active during the day, sleeping or resting at night, And then others are crepuscular, meaning they hunt and are most active during the twilight hours, both at dusk and dawn. I myself like to venture out during dawn and dusk hours because two prevalent species in my area, the barred owl and the great horned owl, are often active either hunting or moving to and from their roosting locations at dawn and dusk. These hours also provide enough light for me to see the owls and where I'm going. One last thing about knowing your area's species and their habitats. Some owl species have managed to adapt to living in urban areas, towns, cities, and have become very tolerant of humans. So don't think that you have to live in a forest just to see an owl. Now that we know what types of owls that we're going to see and where they're most likely to be found, here are a few tips and suggestions to make your owling experience successful and safe for the birds. Owling attire is the same as any other birding outing. Choose earthy colors, shades of green, brown, and tan, steering clear of anything flashy or bright. Owls have excellent hearing and sight. They also have natural camouflage and blend into their surroundings. In my area, the eastern screech owl, a master at camouflage, is the most elusive and difficult to spot. In all of my experiences, I've never caught an owl off guard. Because of their keen sight and sharpened hearing, chances are they've heard you and spotted you long before you've spotted them. Once you spot an owl, stay very quiet and still. Hopefully, you're within close enough range to use your binoculars or spotting scope. The key is not to approach too closely and not to flush it from its perch. When roosting, owls are conserving their energy. If they feel threatened by your presence, they might flee, putting them in a situation of being detected by other birds. Hold your position and just enjoy the view. I have the best luck when I stand quiet and still in one area, scanning the trees and branches around me. I specifically look for the telltale shape of a perched owl. It's similar to a football standing upright. Of course, it's easier to see them perched during the winter when the trees are bare. If an owl perches in a spot often, you might see whitewash on the trunk, owl poop. Owls are known to utilize old hawk or squirrel nests, tree cavities, hollows, or snags. They will also make use of these types of natural settings during their nesting season to raise their young. If you come upon an active nesting site, it is important not to disturb the natural process. Not to mention that owls, like any other living creature, can be aggressive during nesting times if they feel that you are a threat. Other than looking for owls in their natural settings, another way to possibly spot an owl is by listening to the other birds in the area. Other species of birds, including songbirds, will often fuss and harass a bird of prey. Sometimes, different species work together and mob the bird of prey to try and get it to vacate the area. Out here, the American crows are great at calling attention to roosting hawks and owls. Crows are intelligent, loud, bold, tenacious, and extremely effective in their efforts. They do not give up easily. This past spring, I followed the rowdy calls of crows and found a murder of about 20 crows harassing a poor barred owl. They were dive-bombing it, cawing and mobbing. The owl just sat there taking the abuse. With each peck to its head, it would just close its eyes and hunch down. It finally got fed up and took flight, fleeing deeper into the woods and out of sight. The last suggestion is one that I don't use: technology. I'm not here to judge anyone for referring to social media groups or apps to locate rare birds or owls. But I do believe that this method could potentially lead to putting the owl or rare bird in an unsafe situation. While some birding communities, groups, and eBird users will post about their rare bird sightings, I urge you to use caution when using these resources, either posting your own sightings or finding locations from others. Trust me, I get it. Owls are exciting, fascinating, and they are probably on the top of many birders' lists. Heck, I look for owls every time I'm out birding. Okay, let's run down the list of the tips already mentioned. Know your species in your area. What habitats can they be found? What are their behaviors? What time of the day can they be seen or heard? What types of calls do they make? When is their breeding and nesting season? When out owling, remember to wear earthy tones and avoid flashy colors. Walk as quietly as possible. Think bobcat, not Sasquatch. Look for the shape of a roosting owl in trees. I suggest studying the body shapes of the species from your area in a field guide. Remember, owls are masters at camouflage. As an example, when on alert, a screech owl with feathers the colors of the trees they frequent will sometimes stretch their bodies and squint, resembling a tree branch to blend in. This is known as the tall, thin posture and usually means that they're on alert and trying to remain undetected. It's helpful to stop often and scan the area. I like to do this about every 20 to 50 steps. I back myself up against a tree trunk or shrubbery, remaining as still as possible while observing. Once you spot an owl, hold that position. When you move to reposition your binoculars, scope, or camera, channel your inner sloth. You should be able to tell by the owl's behavior if it is alarmed or tolerant of your presence. Each experience will be different, and it's sometimes difficult to interpret the owl's reactions. Context is often key here. Look for abrupt changes in its behavior. If the owl appears frozen and wide-eyed in your direction, as if it's staring into your soul, there is a good chance you're too close and it feels threatened. If it's nesting season, you don't want to interrupt the natural process, and you also don't want to provoke it into defending its territory. Slowly back up, allowing more space between you and the bird. As with the barred owls, I've learned their behaviors enough to understand their comfort zone. Their bodies, facial features, and eyes soften. It's the only way I can describe it. But if the owl suddenly flushes from its perch and flies away, resist the urge to pursue it. Consider yourself lucky. You've just spotted an owl. Now, even though the thrill of spotting these mysterious creatures intrigues us, it's really important to pause and ask, are we acting responsibly and ethically in our pursuit of birding for owls? Owls play a vital role in our ecosystems, controlling rodent populations and balancing food chains. When we disturb them, even unintentionally, we risk disrupting their delicate existence. It's important to point out that the next section isn't about gatekeeping. It's about being responsible and ethical when looking for sensitive species, such as owls. All right, let's dive into some key considerations. Number 1, be responsible and respectful of people, place, and the owls. It's tempting to share that epic owl sighting with your birding friends or on social media, but be cautious about giving away exact locations. A well-meaning post can lead to an influx of visitors, which can overwhelm both the owls and their habitat. Instead, keep your descriptions rather general than specific. Think local forest versus large red oak tree on Maple Lane. I've read several articles online when an owl or rare bird is sighted, and the negative actions and responses by onlookers, including birders, have led to horrendous situations, such as disregarding private property, trampling off trail in parks or sanctuaries, using ladders to get a closer look, throwing rocks or creating noise to get the bird to look in the direction of the observer or photographer, onlookers overcrowding the bird or location, And as disturbing as it sounds, one article from 2016 reported the overwhelming actions of visiting observers may have resulted in the controversial death of a northern hawk owl on the Colville Reservation in Washington state. As birders, it's important that we remain respectful of not only the wildlife, but also the land and the people. Number 2, quietness matters, and ditch the playback temptation. With non-symmetrical ears that channel sound into their facial disc, owls have superb hearing, a sense that they use for hunting, breeding, and safety. No matter how quiet you are, chances are any owl in the area will probably have heard you approaching. Keeping your voice soft and low and turning off your phone's ringtones will help reduce causing alarm to an owl. Years ago, I chaperoned an owl prowl with a 4th grade gifted and talented class at a Texas state park, where the state park employee used playback calls and the sound of a rabbit in distress to call in the owls. I understand using playback for educational and scientific purposes, but birders should think twice before doing it. Using recorded calls to lure owls into view might seem harmless, but it can actually cause confusion and stress out the bird. Unless you understand what type of call you're playing, we have no idea how it will affect the area owls. Think about it. If an owl hears a rival's call, it will gear up to defend its territory. Okay, number 3, resist spotlighting and flash photography. Like hearing, owls have excellent vision, day and night. Of course, their night vision is superb. Their pupils are similar to humans when it comes to how it reacts to bright light, reducing in size to lessen the amount of light entering the retina. However, a bright flash, either from a camera or a spotlight, can cause their photoreceptors to become oversaturated, resulting in what's known as functional blindness that affects the ability to see and recognize objects. This effect can last anywhere from 5 to 30 seconds. The same state park owl prowl I mentioned a moment ago used stationary spotlights. So when the owls flew into the lighted area, they encountered the light on their own, allowing them to adjust to the light naturally. There is a great article on the Audubon website about the ethics of using flash photography with owls. I will link to it in the show notes. For me, owling during the dawn and dusk hours, when there's still enough natural light, is the best experience. Number 4, live bait is not the owl equivalent of birdseed. I recently read a post on Reddit where the person blasted all the quote-unquote birder gatekeepers that baiting an owl is nothing worse than putting birdseed in a feeder in our yards. As you can imagine, the comment section was never ending. Even as an owl lover, the poster's idea did make me take pause. In some ways, the person has a valid point. As someone who puts out birdseed, am I not baiting songbirds into my yard to offer them nourishment, but also gain opportunities to observe them? Okay, unruffle your feathers, dear listeners. I don't condone baiting owls. But gatekeeping aside, luring an owl with dead or live bait is not merely an ethics argument. It's about the safety and well-being of the species and us. Owls are not songbirds. They don't naturally flock to our gardens on a daily basis to visit our feeders. They don't normally stop by bird baths to sip or bathe. They're not accustomed to hang out with humans. It's just not their nature. They're elusive and secretive and prefer to keep their distance, to remain hidden in the wild, to breed and nest without human interference. They want to hunt their own food. Even more than being wild, owls are much larger than songbirds. If they begin to associate humans as a food source, it could create unsafe situations for people. Can you imagine walking in a park and having an owl swoop down to see if you have a mouse to offer? Okay, aside from our own safety, baiting can also put owls in danger of vehicular and building collisions, and too close to urban areas where the threat of rodenticides is much greater. Number 5, distance is best, and respect that nest. A zoom lens or good pair of binoculars will be your best friends when observing owls. Owls are incredibly sensitive to disturbance, especially during their nesting seasons. A few steps too close or a prolonged visit can stress them out, leading to disrupted behavior and putting the owls and their nest in potential danger. If you stumble upon an owl's nest, enjoy from a very respectful distance. Owls are territorial creatures, and in defense of their brood, they may act aggressively if they feel threatened. Another thing I've learned from my Chauncey experience is that fledged owlets are less secretive and very curious. Getting too close or staying too long watching a young owl may be tempting, but it's important to keep in mind that too much human interaction could cause their natural inhibition around people and jeopardize their safety in the future. For their own good, wild creatures should remain just that, wild. The third time Chauncey showed up in a tree outside my home, screeching for my attention, I realized that my daily observation visits to his side of the forest were not in his best interest. In one way, I outstayed my welcome. But I was a new birder, and I didn't understand how my presence impacted him as a species. In many ways, the experience taught me how to be a better birder, more responsible and respectful of wildlife. The last thing I want to mention is knowledge of and experiences in the natural world are gifts. These gifts are not ours to gatekeep, nor should we shame birders who are new to the birding community. Be that better birder and help them. If we want others to care about, understand, learn, love, and respect birds and their habitats, we have to be inclusive and willing to share with others. As a birding community, we can come together to help ensure that these incredible birds thrive long after we have packed up our binoculars. I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode and maybe even gained a kernel of wisdom or two to add to your birding knowledge. If you've had a memorable owl experience and you want to share, send me a message on Instagram at Birding for Joy. I would love to hear your story. I'll be back next week with a new episode. Until then, I wish you well and joyful owling, my friends. If you are enjoying the Birding for Joy podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to the show. Subscribing and tuning in to the episodes lets the algorithm on each platform know the podcast is providing you worthwhile content. It also helps ensure the success of the show. Remember, the absolute best way to support your favorite podcast is by word of mouth. So make sure to share Birding for Joy with others who might enjoy listening. That way we continue to build a joyful birding community. As always, thank you for tuning in and stay chirpy, my friends.